Okay, now we're going to do a little flip of the coin here. We have an amazing group of women sitting here today that represent some of the industry's best marketers, who all happen to be IPG's largest technology clients. So to begin, I'd like to ask the BBC's Zeinab Badawi to join me on stage. Zeinab is one of the world's most renowned journalists and familiar to viewers around the globe. She was the first presenter of the ITV Morning News and co-presented Channel 4 News before she went on to anchor World News Today. Zeinab is currently the president of the BBC's World News Hard Talk. She was born in the Sudan, moved to London at the age of 2. She studied philosophy, politics, and economics at Oxford University and earned a master's degree in Middle East history and anthropology. She's been awarded an honorary doctorate by London University for her services to international broadcasting. Zeinab is one of the best-known broadcast journalists around the globe in the field today, and in 2009 was awarded the International TV's Personality Broadcaster of the Year and has been named one of Britain's top 100 most influential members of the Black community. She is the current chair of the Royal African Society, a patron of the BBC Action Committee, vice president of the United Nations Association UK, and a board member of the African Union Foundation. Wow. And on a personal note, I told her earlier, in this job I travel a lot for business and often alone. And she has been kind of my comfort and security blanket around the globe when I travel and put on the BBCs. So with that, I'd like to introduce Zeinab to introduce our panelists and say how thrilled we are from all of IPG to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Marcy. Thank you so much. Thank you so much indeed, Marcy, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And I've been allowed to abuse my position as moderator by just saying a couple of words myself. It is my great pleasure to be attending this breakfast with all of you today at this Women's Leadership Network, because as somebody who travels all over the world for the BBC, I do know that regardless of race, colour or creed, there is something that is relevant to all women, regardless of where they live, which is the fact is, in whatever sector, the glass ceiling has only been shattered and it needs to be broken in so many ways. And networks like this, whereby women in positions of leadership, because you all are really accomplished women who've achieved a great deal, you know, you are standard bearers for women everywhere. And this kind of gathering, it reinforces the significance of that. For me, it's really a no-brainer because I went to an all-women's college at Oxford and I was at an all-girls school. So I grew up with women in very powerful positions who taught me, who are very inspiring. And so I know firsthand that you feel there are no barriers if you are aware of women in positions of leadership. Having said that, the role of men is very important. Enlightened men like Michael Roth, Chairman and CEO of IPG, who I know, Michael, you have done a great deal to promote not only women, but also women of colour in your organisation. And, you know, we need the cooperation and the participation of men like Michael. And I just say that, again, my own family background informs me of the importance of this, because my great-grandfather in the Sudan was the pioneer of girls' education. At the turn of the last century, there were no schools for girls in the Sudan, but he, with his vision, said, you know, I don't see why my daughters should not be educated just as my sons are. And in fact, he was so pro-women, he married 4 of them. The only blot on his otherwise blemish-free record, because he was a very good Muslim. But, you know, I grew up with women who were, you know, PhDs from Western universities who are now in their 70s and 80s. So please do remember that you are ambassadors, you know, in what you do, and that wherever you go, there are young women everywhere, wherever you travel, who will be looking up to you and also being inspired by you. And women have compassion in abundance, and I believe that two of the most important values in life are compassion and passion. With compassion, you identify the right thing to do, and with passion, you will do it. So please, let's carry on with our efforts, and I'd like to, in fact, invite to the stage 4 women who really embody what we are discussing today. My panel, please come up to the stage. And, you know, these ladies between them, they control something like, is it 2 billion, 4 billion of, is it 2 billion or 4 billion? It's something like that anyway. I think it's actually in the billions of budgets and so on. So when you meet them later, you better be very nice to them. So I'm going to start off by just saying, ladies, we don't have a huge amount of time, but we're going to, I'm sure, just pick over some of the things that you want to raise and, you know, tell our audience about. So, Linda Boff, let us start with you. You are at GE, and I love your slogan, which is, people think that with a creative budget you need lots and lots of money, but you like to shout louder than you spend. But do just tell us what you do, and you've got a small little video you want to show us.
Yes, I do. So thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here. A big thank you to Michael and IPG. Shout louder than you spend is a lovely code for, we don't have very big budgets at GE. So we take a lot of pride, and I think the creatives in the room will appreciate this, in making every dollar go as far as it possibly can. We lean very heavily into digital and social and mobile and kind of being first to market, which is part of GE's DNA. But I want to switch this around, obviously, and make it about the topic of the morning. So one of the things that we try very hard to do at GE, and I lead a lot of our marketing, advertising, that sort of thing, is to tell great stories. That's something I think we can all relate to. And to do it in an unexpected way. And unfortunately, today, still, unexpected is talking about women and engineering, women and science, women and technology. It shouldn't be, but it is. So I thought I'd begin, if you'll allow me, with a very, very short piece of creative that we use to celebrate the engineer in every woman. So if you can just roll the tape, please.
Science is like everything. I built a garage door opener.
Wrong tape.
I coded a robot that talks to you. I used to think technology was great.
Ah, a little glitch
Or the other
there.
tape.
That was the Microsoft. Is this the right one? This is the right one. We love the video. Thank you very much, Linda. Becky Brown, you are from Intel. And talking of engineering, you are actually an engineer. You studied at Montana State University, but now you are at Intel. Just give us a brief overview of what you're doing there in this regard.
Great. Yeah, thank you, and thank you again for this opportunity. So I've been at Intel most of my career with a short departure. So I've been there 21 years, and I started as a technical engineer, so I've seen a lot of transformation at Intel and a lot of transformation in the engineering community on, empowering women and getting young girls into science and technology. So I manage the digital marketing and the media efforts globally for Intel.
Good. Short and brief, admirable. Thank you.
I see that as an encouragement.
I do actually, yes. Kathleen Hall, you're from Microsoft, and congratulations. At the end of last year, you were promoted to
Corporate Vice President, Global Advertising and Media. Thank you very much. Yes, I work at Microsoft in Redmond, Washington, which as a New Yorker and a woman is both disconcerting. I have a little piece to show, actually, because we are addressing the issue of diversity. I'm sad to say that our industry is actually worse than the advertising industry in terms of women represented in the workforce, and we're working hard to correct that. And as we looked at the problem, we found we didn't have enough women in interview loops. We didn't have enough women in interview loops because there weren't enough women graduating with the right degrees. And there weren't enough women graduating with the right degrees is because girls were being kind of desocialized out of science and math programs. So honestly, with an all-female creative team, in about 6 days, we decided we wanted to send out a message at International Women's Day, and we went to New York City Public Schools and talked to some girls about the issue, and that's the video.
Science is like everything. I built a garage door opener. I coded a robot that talks to you. I used to think technology was great. Then I started thinking that it was more of a boys' thing. There used to be a girl in the robotics class. She quit. I'm the only girl left. They have Albert Einstein, he was a guy. In commercials, I saw a lot more men doing it. Benjamin Franklin also. Thank you. Wow, thank you. Dear Gabrielle, keep opening those garage doors. We think you'll create something great for us one day. I might someday, but not yet, because I'm pretty much not old enough. It's just really cool that I would write a letter. It's cool.
Just to close on that, one of the amazing things was the response to that email was phenomenal. By the way, dads were overwhelmingly responsive to this message. We connected every girl that responded with an engineer or a science technology background person at Microsoft to create a mentorship program. And I'll just tell you one quick note. A woman sent us a letter. She had lost her children in an international divorce, and they were living in Tunisia, 2 of which were girls. And she said, could you please send my daughter one of these notes? And we created a note and we sent it to her. And she sent us back her daughter's note that said this, and it's very hard to do without getting emotional. It said, dear Microsoft, I now know that I can be anything and do anything. I take your note with me every day to school and show all the other girls at school. And my baba, she puts in parentheses, dad said, I can be whatever I want to be. So if you can have a dad in Tunisia tell a little girl you can do anything, I think that's an amazing accomplishment. So thanks to the creative team. I hope they're out there.
Thank you very much, Kathleen. And Susan Lyne at AOL, you are responsible, in fact, for managing a capital fund which is trying to invest in technology-led firms, startups that are started up by women. So tell us a bit more about that.
So I run BBG Ventures, which actually sounds very corporate, but really BBG stands for Built by Girls. It's our venture fund to invest in women-led tech startups. And this is largely because the VC world is even less embracing of women than either advertising or tech companies. I joined AOL initially as part of the board, and when it spun out of Time Warner about 6 years ago, Tim Armstrong got to put together a full board, which is rare, and he said from the start he wanted at least a third of them to be female. 2 of us went into the executive team over those years, and 2 more women came onto the board, so it has always had at least a third women. And women's leadership has been a big issue for the company as a whole. I think most of you know Makers. Not just because it's the right thing to do, but also because it's just smart business. We all quote the 85% of purchases are either influenced or made by women. But if you look at all the fastest growing parts of the internet, whether it's Facebook is 58% female, Twitter 64% female, Snapchat, Instagram 70% female users, Pinterest 84% female. So the idea of backing entrepreneurs who know that end user best just feels like smart business.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. I think we're all agreed that, you know, we all back the fact that we want more women represented in this particular case in the creative industries. It's a bit like motherhood and apple pie. We're all agreed with that. But I think if we can just quickly rattle through the why, what, and how, just first of all, why you believe that this is this lamentable state of affairs. It is, you know, why is it the case? And do you think that the fact that the creative industry, advertising now in particular, is so technology-driven that it's actually going to exacerbate the problem? It's going to put off more women coming in because there is so much, you know, digital stuff involved?
Sure. So why? I think there are a lot of reasons as to why. Probably everybody in this room has their own reason. A few of us were together yesterday talking about this, and I think, to me, it comes from a few things. I think people are comfortable with who they're comfortable with, unfortunately or fortunately, and I think all of our industries, if you trace them back, have a lot of men at the top, and that comfort has given them, you know, people who look like them. So I think we're all part of the change, not just the folks on the panel up here, but all of you. I actually loved what you said at the very beginning, compassion and passion. I think women have traits that we over-index in. Compassion, I think, is one of them. Perhaps passion is too. So I think the obligation we all have is to find, encourage, sort of step even more overtly to find young women and both model that change and give them the courage to do it. So I think it sounds simple, it sounds like motherhood and apple pie, but if you don't overtly do it as an individual, it doesn't happen.
And do you think the fact that so much in the industry is becoming technologically driven is going to perhaps put off women at the moment until we have those aspiring young engineers and scientists coming
I think
up?
you would think so, because you would think the intersection of technology and advertising is a double negative. I think actually what's happening in the industry because of technology is so much collaboration has to occur. Like there isn't, when you looked at a couple of the projects you saw highlighted here, there were collaborations between 5, 4, 6 entities. And I think women, again, a kind of traditional skill, we're good at kind of putting together multiple parties and bringing it all into one big piece. And so I think the skill set involved in the intersection of technology and advertising might actually benefit women in roles.
Do you think it's getting better in terms of?
I think it's getting better because I think people are talking about it. And that's always the start of change. I also think that creative, like what we've seen here, I loved your piece. I think it's just fantastic. And one of the things that I see over and over again is that our biggest allies are fathers of daughters. You know, every man wants his daughter to have an equal opportunity when she grows older. So that's a wake-up call to a lot of the guys who are in VCs right now, who are not backing female-led companies, and they start talking about it. They start looking for deal flow. They start, and it's quiet. No one's going to acknowledge the fact that they've been dumb about this. But there's no question that the Ellen Pao trial over the summer, even though it was not successful, it got people talking and thinking, and there's change coming out of that.
Change coming out of it. Becky, when you were a student of engineering, how many women were in your...
There were 2.
Out of?
We had like 100.
2 out of 100?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
So
I
I
mean,
kind of grew up in a place where there weren't always a lot of women. And even when I went to Intel, there was a very small percentage of people that were, you know, in engineering at Intel. So, you know, to me, we didn't have this conversation. And it was just, you just go to work and there was just a lot of men always in the room. And I always remember, you know, I'd be like, am I the only woman? And I'd look around and, yeah, I'm the only woman in this meeting. And now things have definitely changed.
things have got better, but I mean, still, there's a very small number,
We had a long way to
proportionately,
go,
yes, of
especially
women
in
in STEM subjects, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Medicine, of course, is an exception, where there are actually in the UK more women studying medicine, maybe because it's seen as something that's more altruistic, I don't know. Okay, so you all agree that there's something to be done there, and clearly we've heard about your efforts, both, you know, externally to try to encourage young women to go into technology, science, engineering, that kind of thing. So what else can you do? I mean, one big debate, of course, that's gone on over the decades is whether you have this issue of, you know, quotas. Do large companies, should they have quotas whereby they have to have a certain number of women in the boardroom or, you know, in high executive positions and so on? Some countries in Europe do, Norway, France, for instance, the United Kingdom as a voluntary kind of, you know, code of practice. Where do you stand on this? Do you think you should have quotas?
So we've said publicly, and it isn't necessarily a quota, but it's a target, that we will get to full representation at all levels by 2020. And we have put a fund of $300 million to get us to that effort. So that's across bringing in new talent. It's across working with our supply chain. So the people that do business with us, we want to represent that same representation of women through our supply chain with our agencies. And then also, working at the pipeline level, because if your representation level is getting lower and lower, it means you have fewer and fewer people to actually fill that pipeline. So it's going into education and for both technology and the gaming industry to really redefine what that representation looks like.
Yeah. One of the reasons that I think it is so important to get women onto boards is that there is a trickle down from there. And I saw at AOL the fact that a third of us were female. When we first went to our board meetings and Tim would bring his exec team in, they all looked exactly like Tim. Every single person around the table looked exactly like him. And I think at a certain point it started to be almost embarrassing to him that he had this very diverse board, and yet his exec team was all dudes. And
So do you believe in targets,
right now,
quotas?
As a result of that, it's now 50% of his direct reports are female. So that's a huge step change. I don't think that quotas are the way to go here. I think the way to go is to push to get women into boards, and that will have a massive trickle-down effect on the rest of the executive team at companies.
Kathleen?
Yeah, I'm anti-quota. I'm not speaking for Microsoft. I think we're making a lot of effort around changing things. But I think, we fought so hard to be recognized for our capability. I think everybody deserves that chance, regardless of sex, background, whatever. So I don't believe in quotas. But I do think mentoring and being an example and being a visible example is as good as anything. I would say about a 75% female team in a very, very male-dominated company, and we hope to have those people kind of begin to seed out and create their own little, islands of goodness and have it perpetuate.
And of course, Susan, yeah.
Linda.
Linda,
it's okay, it's all good.
We're both blonde.
So I'll tell you what GE does, and I'll tell you how I feel personally. So at GE, we treat it like a business. And it's been a very good approach. We have a women's network that was founded under Jack Welch. That was nearly 20 years ago. We really run it almost as a business. We have hub chairs. We use this as an opportunity over the years to groom women, because it's a way for women, even young in the organization, to take a real leadership role. It's about 50,000 people. We operate at scale, so everything's at scale. And we use it to get women into the pipeline. So it's wonderful from that point of view. Our board, I just double-checked it before I came up here, we currently have 4 women on our board. I would say that smashes any quota that could be given to us. 2 of them are advertising women, Shelley Lazarus and Andrea Young. Ann Fudge has been on our board. Susan Huckfield is on our board now. So it's a wonderful representation. Personally, I would really be crushed if I were hired because there was a quota.
Okay.
So on a personal level, not speaking for GE, I want to be hired because I'm great.
Okay. And Becky, I know that you in particular do a great deal, not only with, addressing the gender imbalance, but also women of color, other minorities, I suppose one could say, the
American
lesbian,
Indian.
gay,
Yep.
and American Indians.
In fact, I am American
Native.
Indian.
Are you? Oh, yes, you are. Yes, I read about that. Yes. Good. So just in our final couple of minutes, ladies, somebody once said that the best way to predict the future is to change it. But just tell us what your wish list is, what keeps you awake at night, although you all look like you've had your beauty sleep. In your final closing statements, let's go along this way. Susan.
I think the thing that is really hopeful to me is that there's a whole generation of young women coming out of school right now who are actually not thinking about going into big companies, but are thinking about building something themselves. Since we started BBG Ventures, we've seen 500 companies that were founded by, launched by women. And that's incredible. That's a vast new movement of young girls who think they can impact the world. So I'm excited about it. I think there's a massive opportunity out there, particularly when you think of the fact, and I just heard this yesterday, that Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, Pinterest were all created by first-time entrepreneurs. So, you know, the next great market-defining products, market-defining companies may come from young women who are coming out of school right now.
Thank you. Kathleen Hall from Microsoft.
You know, what keeps me up at night, and I haven't solved it yet, is it's not a one-dimensional problem. I think we focused on, do we have women with the right skill sets and capabilities, and I think that's kind of been addressed. I think that's an issue of sort of socialization. As I've brought in diverse people to Microsoft, you know, I actually had a woman who I just ran into the bathroom all the time, an Indian woman, and she sat with a lot of male engineers. And at one point, she was moving out of the building, and she said, "Thank you for talking to me." And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Well, no one talks to me during the day." So there's layers of issues, and I think we have to get in deep on the sort of, what is the social, personal experience within companies that are very male dominant? And, you know, I'm trying to figure that out right now as part of the diversity committee at Microsoft, so.
Thank you. Becky Brown, Intel.
Yeah, I mean, I think things are definitely encouraged that we're having this kind of conversation. I think the challenge that I think about a lot is having enough mentorship and enough sponsors to reach all the women. So if you look at Intel, like I'm a mentor and a sponsor to 6 women, and you know that's my commitment, and then there's other women have to make that same commitment so that we can scale. And I think that's the biggest thing is, do we have enough people that are going to really lean in to help sponsor and mentor the next wave of women leaders?
Thank you. And briefly and finally, Linda Boff, GE.
Yeah, I guess I love the fact that the work we're celebrating and a lot of the work we saw this morning isn't wrapped in pink, but it's just celebrating strong women, strong girls, and sort of modeling and showing that path forward. It wasn't all that long ago that marketing to women was this sort of rose-colored, you know, do what you're normally doing, but sort of wrap it in a, I don't know, feminine tissue paper. So I'm thrilled that that's changed.
Thank you very much indeed. Ladies, thank you all very much indeed for your time. Thank you.